Come on. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mark, and everybody. My name is John Hersey. I'm a Senior Associate for Transit-Oriented Development at RTD. My peers Julie Stern and Rachel King are happy to see you this afternoon and explain a little bit about this request for qualifications. Before Julie and Rachel and I get in the weeds, we'd welcome Rick Padilla, the city's Director of Housing Development, as well as Bill Soroy, RTD Senior Manager for Transit-Oriented Communities, to say a few words about the project.
Great. Thanks, John. Well, they scripted me a few talking points, but for those of you that have visited with me before, I tend to go off script, so I'll do that this time as well. I want to channel Paul Washington. This was really Paul Washington and Mayor Hancock's vision 2 years ago, and RTD and Julie and Rachel and Bill, they've really worked on very, very hard over the last couple of years to make this happen. And this is, I mean, the legislature, some of the changes they made in construction defects, what the city of Denver did locally with the construction defects ordinance and the Bellagio decision, I think helped bring all of this together where we're at today. We're really excited about working with all of you. I see some really familiar faces that we've worked with great developers that have done great things in Denver in the past, and this is exciting. As we all know, condominium development, particularly below the $400,000 mark, has been virtually non-existent in our city for several years now. I mean, all of you have done great work in building multifamily, land trust models, single-family detached, but still a small portion of really how great the need is. So again, Paul Washington, Mayor Hancock, channeling them, this is a pilot, for one. We intend on doing this in several other sites. So really what we do here today is really going to set the benchmark for what we hope to do throughout the city. And we know other cities along the Front Range are looking at what we're doing right now. We've reached far and wide across the country to try to put together this model. And I know we have a lot of local developers. We've had interest from out-of-state developers. So this is the beginning. The team will walk you through some of what we're looking for, the timelines around that. And we're just thrilled. So I want to thank all of you for really joining us this afternoon. We're excited about getting this rolling. So with that, Bill, let me turn it over to you. Thank you all.
Thanks, Rick. And I don't have any scripted words, so I don't know what I'm going to say. No, just kidding. Thanks, and thanks you all for coming. This has kind of been a long journey for us at RTD. This site was actually part of the original TOD pilot program that was established in 2009. We spent a long time looking at this site, talking with the city, trying to strategize what was the best option. I think in the meantime, when we did all that, you see all the stuff that's happening around us in terms of just the level of investment that we're seeing in 5 Points today. And I think we're looking at this as a way to shore up the affordability in the community and really set kind of a bar with condominiums, which is an area, like Rick said, that we've been challenged with implementing here because of construction defects and other things. So we're really excited at RTD to be a part of this, and like I said, it's been quite a conversation with the city, and we're just excited that you're all here to come and hopefully bid on this project. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick and Bill. The other point that I missed was please sign in. If you haven't signed in, please do so. We'd love to be able to get a hold of you if you need. The project. So as Bill referenced, RTD owns 2 parcels in 5 Points, which together comprise about 0.43 acres in the 5 Points Historic Cultural District. An important point about the district is that it carries specific design standards and guidelines. And also, the adjacent Curtis Park Historic District requires a limit on the height allowance on the northwest boundary of the property, so along the alley at 29th Street and Welton Street. The property is zoned for CMX5, so it can go up to 5 stories. We have modeled it financially, and we've designed it as well, so we know it can happen. We got about 50 units and 60 parking spaces out of it. So we're excited to have your help in delivering the project. One other point I should mention about the 5 Points Historic Cultural District, any proposal will also need the approval of the city's Landmark Preservation Commission. A little history about the project. Walk with me down memory lane. In 1993, RTD acquired the property in order to relocate parking, that parallel parking from Welton Street during the Central Corridor construction on the light rail corridor there. In 2010, RTD approved, as Bill noted, RTD, the board of directors, approved the TOD pilot program, which included the Welton corridor as well as 3 stations across the district. The pilot program was designed for RTD to learn how TOD performed in Metro Denver. And this project is a capstone to that effort. In 2013, the 5 Points Business District Office, I think I saw Tracy somewhere in the back, 5 Points Business District Office published a report, the Vision Plan Implementation and Revitalization Strategy, which called for less parking, greater cultural activation, and greater housing affordability in the neighborhood. So with that, RTD in 2016, late last year, the RTD Board of Directors approved the sale of the property contingent upon 3 important factors. First, the housing units must be for sale. Second, 25% of those units must be sold at a price affordable to households that earn 80% of the area median income. And Julie will detail those numbers later. And then third, any developer will have to show proof of financing. The developer will have to secure financing before RTD will sell the property. And then early this year, March, April, spring of 2017, RTD and OED hosted an open house in April, and as well as distributed an online survey for folks to try to gauge interest in the site, what the property should do for the neighborhood. A few highlights from that work. The project, it's right in front of me. Project should replace existing parking that's on there. I believe it's 48 spaces, if I'm not mistaken. Also, the project should look attractive. I think the site's location in the Historic Cultural District and its design standards and guidelines and approval by the Landmark Commission will be enough to meet that threshold. There was also a strong preference for commercial on Welton Street, on the ground floor along Welton Street. 71% of respondents wanted to see a grocery store. 61% of respondents would like to see a restaurant or a bar. 54% would like to see retail, and there are other, as included in the RFQ, there are other interests as well. And finally, the project should welcome families. Survey respondents had the option of selecting studios. They did not. 25% one bedrooms, significantly more for 2-bedroom, and about 11% for 3-bedroom. I think I'll turn it over to Julie now to speak about what we hope to gain from the RFQ. Thank you.
Can't quite fit through. Great, thank you, John. So John gave a little bit of background on kind of how RTD came into this partnership and what this site meant to RTD, how it fit in with RTD's goals. I'm going to start off by saying just a little bit about where the idea came from within OED and how this fits into what OED does before I dive into the specifics of the project. So within the City of Denver's Office of Economic Development, we work in numerous areas, including business development, workforce development, small business opportunity. We also work in housing, affordable housing development. So we are a gap financer for affordable housing development projects. Historically, our model has been more that developers put together projects and come to us when they know what their gap is and have everything put together except that gap, and then we step in with gap financing. This is a little bit of a new model for us, where we are working with a partner, in this case, to get site control and then seek a developer to deliver a specific outcome. So we're really excited about what this new partnership could mean for us, and as Rick said, hope that this will serve as a pilot that we can replicate throughout the city. In terms of our history of investing in affordable housing, we've actually done quite a lot of investment along the Welton corridor, and this was, I would say, a signature effort for our recent former executive director, Paul Washington. This image shows all kinds of investments that we've made along the Welton corridor, but I've called out with red stars here investments in affordable rental. Most of these affordable rental units are serving households at or below 60% of area median income. And we're proposing to serve a higher income bracket with this project. And you can see that with the red dot where this project fits in. So why are we looking at serving households at a higher income? Let's start on the left side of this slide. This chart here, I hope it's big enough, shows what has happened to for sale housing prices in the city and county of Denver over the past 6 years or so. So the top line shows you single family home prices. The bottom line shows you condo prices, and then those numbers are the median of the most recent 12 months of sales for each. So you can see in each category, housing prices have literally doubled in the last 6 years. If you move over to the right side of the slide, here are a couple of those key numbers that John promised I would get into. The affordable price for a home buyer earning 80% of median income, the way we calculate it, is just shy of $170,000 for a one-bedroom home, or about $218,000 for a two-bedroom home. And just to kind of help you ground this and what kind of folks we're thinking about, those incomes are up there. Area median income, as many of you know, varies with household size. So the area median income for a one-person household, 80%, is $47,000, and then for a four-person household, that goes up to $67,100. Obviously, there's a huge discrepancy between those prices on the right side that are affordable and the prices that the market is offering today. What we're especially focused on is if you look at condo prices where they were in December 2011 all the way at the beginning of the graph, condos were affordable to households making 80% of median income, and now they are far, far out of reach. So that's just kind of a little bit on why, as Rick said, we have partners in the room who are doing great work building for sale affordable housing, but we also believe that condos specifically are an important type that needs to be added to the affordable mix. This is all within the context of construction defects in Colorado, which makes it very challenging, and we've heard costly to build condos. This is just a kind of a quick graphical representation. I think this is my last graph, sorry, of what has happened to condo construction over the last decade or so. We've just seen very, very few new condos come online. This does end in 2015, and we're seeing a slight uptick, but it's really been at the high end of the market and not solving that problem of creating entry-level affordability. So that's what we're looking for a partner to help us solve. John went into a quick overview of what we're looking for a partner to develop on the site, but again, we are looking for a project where at least 25% of units must be affordable to income-qualified buyers at 80% of area median income. We would love to see projects that offer more than 25% of units, but we're also looking for the best bang for our buck, so the project that delivers the greatest public benefit for the amount of public resources that are being requested. I've also called out here a couple points from the community feedback we received, again, both at a meeting that we held in April, as well as through an online survey. And I'd encourage you to review the RFQ proposal guidelines closely. I'll say that a couple times at various points going forward from here. But there's much more detail on what we heard from the community and kind of directly in the words that we heard. but just tried to highlight a few key things here. So one piece of feedback we heard was, as John alluded to, the affordable units should be primarily the higher bedroom count units. So it was more important to the community to see affordable 2 or 3 bedrooms and affordable studios in the project. They felt the studios in 1 bedrooms could be market rate, but it was really important to get those larger units affordable. As John also talked about, the project must meet the 5 Points Cultural Historical District Design Guidelines. The community feedback includes several examples of projects along the corridor that the community felt were well-designed, as well as a couple projects that the community shamed that we won't shame here today. The project should include below-grade parking is something we heard from the community, and the design guidelines strongly encourage an activated grounds floor, and that was also really important to the community. And we do have a couple more detailed responses about what kind of ground floor activation the community was interested in. Finally, we're looking for a project that meets sustainable design benchmarks. So I'm now going to transition into talking about exactly what we're looking for in your response to the RFQ. We have kind of 2 sections to our required application materials. And one thing I don't think I've mentioned yet is that even though this is an RFQ, not an RFP, this is not the first stage in a 2-stage procurement. So we are expecting to make a final selection from the responses that are submitted in response to the RFQ. That said, this is a little bit of a hybrid between an RFQ and an RFP. So in the first part of the required application materials, we're really going to want to hear about your experience and what you've done that you are bringing to the project. So it's kind of more of a traditional RFQ point of view. In the second part, we're going to be asking more about your vision, your specific vision for the site. So I'm just going to walk through piece by piece here. There's 5 parts or 5 requirements in the first part about your experience. One is your experience and success developing condominiums, and we will give preference to respondents that have experience developing condominiums in a construction defects context. We recognize that very few Denver developers have had the opportunity to do so, but that experience is really valuable to us. We're also looking for a partner who has experience and success developing income-restricted, income-qualified housing. So as those of you who have done that work know, there is kind of a whole layer of knowledge that goes along with marketing, finding, and selling, qualifying and selling to qualified buyers. So we're looking for to learn about the experience that respondents have in that area. Third, we know that there will need to be some subsidy to make this project work. In the RFQ, we have not offered a specific amount of subsidy, but we are prepared to make attractive financing available. And we're looking for someone who has experience working with partners like us. I think you would all admit we're not always easy to work with, so that experience is going to be really valuable to us. And then 4th and 5th, these are just kind of basic, but we're looking for, we want to know what the development team's experience is. We're hoping to get responses from multidisciplinary teams, so that include a developer, a contractor, and an architect. And that is kind of tied to what it takes to successfully handle construction defects. Having those tight relationships is, we found in our research, a really key ingredient to success. And then finally, access to capital. We want to know that you'll be able to pull it off. We'll take questions at the end of the presentation, if you can hold. Is it a clarifying question?
Actually, had to do with the first item that you had out there, first question. So the question was, on those 5 areas, are they all going to be equally weighted?
We have not yet finalized the numeric weighting between those 5 areas.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? The reason I'm asking is the first time that you had out in terms of experience in developing condos,
Mm-hmm.
what, I mean, I'm not sure why you put so much emphasis on that. When affordable housing is affordable housing, cash flow is cash flow, and design is design. And what's, I mean, why go to that extent of giving preferential treatment to developers who have done condos versus those that have not, even though they've been involved in affordable housing?
I don't want to get too deep into this outside of the Q&A, but I'll just say briefly, we did some pretty extensive research, and that was part of the reason that it was such a long journey to get to this RFQ, and we found that a critical element to success building condos are kind of certain approaches to construction that are different from other multifamily residential construction. And so we're looking for someone who, if they haven't had that experience directly, can show how they're going to bring that knowledge in. And if you'd like to follow up, let's do that in the Q&A. The second part of the required materials is really more looking to the future. So what are you envisioning for the site, and how would you plan to approach the project? The first part is really just describing what you would build on the parcel. We'd want to know details like how many residential units would be provided, bedroom counts, AMI levels, how the project will meet the design guidelines of the 5 Points Historic Cultural District, how the project will meet sustainable design guidelines. One thing we want to note here is, Jeff, I'm going to embarrass you. Jeff, with Studio Architecture, Jeff Dawson, has partnered with RTD, and early on in the process did some architectural work, kind of helping us understand what the yield of the site would be. That work's included as an appendix to the RFQ. So we're not asking respondents to do full-blown architectural work. In this section, respondents can feel free to kind of just respond to the work that's already been done. But you don't have to provide full drawings to respond to this RFQ. On project financing, this is where you're going to tell us how much public investment you're looking for, as well as what other private financing you'll be leveraging. So we'll want to know what your ask from the city would be, what terms you're looking at. And again, we haven't prescribed a specific amount of financing, but we are looking for the proposal that is going to make the best use of what public financing is included. There's a part of the RFQ that outlines other financing opportunities that may be available in addition to OED's financing. One is that this project is located within an urban redevelopment area and may be able to access TIF financing. Any respondent who plans to access TIF financing must talk to Dura before submitting their response. And actually, Victor Caesar, who will be the contact from Dura, is in the back here and can answer some questions about TIF financing in the Q&A section. We have also talked with CHAFA about this project, the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. Many of you may have worked with them on the tax credit side, and many of you know that they also provide construction financing. They are also willing to meet with respondents to discuss potential construction financing, which we did identify as a barrier specific to condo construction, so that's potentially a great resource. But again, if you're considering bringing in CHAFA construction financing, you must talk to CHAFA, and there is contact information in the RFQ proposal guidelines. The third part of the kind of what you will do with the site is the implementation strategy. And here we're really looking for you to explain to us how you'll handle the timelines to closing, how you'll handle all the moving pieces of public financing, private financing, entitlements. We included in an appendix information about the post-selection requirements, so kind of what process the selected partner can expect once they're selected. And so we encourage you to review that. If it's unclear, submit questions before the question deadline, and we can address them in the addendum. But we want to see that the respondents really engaged with that. In the home stretch here, the fourth piece is your strategy for dealing with construction defects. So how you are going to bring in some of those strategies that we've identified as being really critical to being successful in condo development. And then finally, your community engagement strategy. So we did the first step of gathering community input with a community meeting and a survey, but we really want the selected developer to continue that conversation with the community, and for the community to be able to have continued input as the plans and the design for the site are finalized. So we're looking for respondents to let us know how they are planning to do that. So just a short list of requirements. Yes?
Quick question concerning community engagement. Are you looking for the immediate community's engagement or the larger community so that the feedback from the larger community can be implemented in the other models going forward?
We're focused primarily on kind of the neighborhood, the immediate community, but if a respondent had a vision for engaging the community more broadly with an eye towards replication, that would be very interesting to us. So with that, I will turn it over to Rachel, who's just going to walk through kind of the process, how we are looking for you to answer all these questions, and when.
Okay. So this stays. Hi, my name is Rachel King. I am with the Office of Economic Development, and I'll be serving as the RFQ coordinator for this RFQ. So given that, we wanted to go over a couple of the key items for timeline, milestones, process. That way we get in your applications and they are complete and on time. So obviously today we're at our pre-bid meeting. A couple of weeks from now, we have our RFQ questions deadline. Keep in mind, this is just for the substantive questions. So any questions you have on the RFQ guidelines themselves, along those lines, that is your deadline for those questions. Keep in mind, we have a hard deadline of 4 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. We have to do this because we have to give our staff, both with OED and RTD, enough time to turn those questions around into answers for your addendum. Now, as I said, these are just your substantive questions. If you're having technical issues or you have questions regarding the WiseHive system, those will be answered through the entire process of the application being open. So don't worry about that end if you can't upload a document or anything like that. Those questions will be accepted all the way until October 17th. But as I said, we have our questions. Then our addendum is published about a week later with those answers from OED and RTD. Now keep in mind that this is one of our planned addendums, but it's always possible that if we have to change the RFQ, that an additional addendum may be posted. This has happened in the past before. That's why it's so important for you to sign in. Those sign-in sheets give us the email that will give you a heads up that those addendums are being posted to the website. And again, they will be posted to the OED funding opportunities page. So then after we get out the addendum regarding the questions, we have about a month for our developers to process those questions and those answers, work those into their applications. And our RFQ submission deadline, again, this is for WiseHive, is on October 17th. This is a very hard deadline. If you start your application on October 17th, I can pretty much guarantee you it's not going to be submitted on time. So if you're submitting it at 5 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, the application won't go through. If you're submitting it at 4:30, it won't go through. 4:01 won't go through. I cannot stress that enough. We've had to turn away applications because people submitted them too late before in the past. So keep that in mind. Don't try to submit your application at 3:50 p.m. on October 17th. Okay. And then we are anticipating a large amount of material to come in. So to be kind to our staff with OED and RTD, we have a little bit of time for us to process that information, make some selections regarding selected finalists, and then we're looking in probably early December, again, these are tentative, to schedule those interviews with the selected finalists as well as get out a conditional selection letter. So diving into that timeline a little bit further, we have our submission deadline, that's in about mid-October, and then we have the evaluations of the proposals on our end as well as the review of those evaluations, and then that's where those selected finalists come through and we schedule those interviews. The reason why it is a conditional letter of selection is because of those post-selection requirements that Julie alluded to earlier. So not only do we anticipate that most of the developers would be interested in applying for OED financing, we also have to, as OED, exercise our option through that option agreement. So those two processes will take some time on the back end of the selection, and then both of those do have to go through City Council and be approved before we can move on to the next step. So ideally, both of those processes would culminate in going through City Council around the same time frame, so we wouldn't have to go and then go again. So that is our vision for that, and we'll hopefully make that work out. But after we get City Council approval, then we have the assignment and the assumption of the option agreement between OED and the developer, and then finally the developer can close on the acquisition with RTD. Going into the documents a little bit, we have RFQ guidelines, and again, these are all required for you to read through. We can't stress that enough. If you're just relying on this and a couple of pieces of information here and there, it's quite likely that your application will not have all the required materials in it, and that's extremely important that you go over all of those. That's inclusive of the appendix. A, we have post-selection requirements. Appendix D is the option agreement. Those are items that are very important for you to review. So our guidelines and application checklist, just to remind you, all the pieces that you have to upload to WiseHive. A WiseHive guide as far as logging in, creating an account, getting through the application, and then the link itself, which is embedded in the guidelines, is at our funding opportunities website on OED. If you're not familiar with that, it's a little bit tricky to get to the funding opportunities page if you're just at the OED site. So make sure you scroll down, it's on the bottom right corner, and that'll bring you to the funding opportunities. If you don't see this when you log in or when you go to the OED funding opportunities site, it's probably just because there's another one that was posted on top of it. Just scroll down, it's all still there. This meeting will also be published on this website. There'll be a link to the video. And this is, again, where the addendums will be posted for the RFQ as well. So WiseHive, if you're not familiar with WiseHive, this is the main application system that OED uses to collect our applications for RFQs and RFPs. Again, there is a WiseHive guide that's on the website that you can follow, but it's pretty user-friendly. Once you get in, log in, or create an account, you'll know you're at the right place. You'll see this information, a little blurb about the RFQ. You'll see the required documents that you need to get through the application. And then this is just one web page. So you'll scroll down, you'll enter in all the information you need to enter. The required documents are marked with a little red asterisk. The only exception to that I can't stress enough is the diversity and inclusiveness e-form. If you've done business with the city before, you understand, you have to use the link, fill out the e-form, and then enter the OED proposals email as the confirmation email for that e-form. If you follow the instructions on the application, this will be easy. Just follow the the instructions, and you'll submit it. You'll also get a confirmation email, so you'll know that it will have gone through. That's important because we can't control that with the WiseHive system. If you don't submit that, the application will be non-responsive, and then we can't accept the application. So along those lines, just a couple of key reminders. Please pay attention to the application requirements. If you're uploading a document into WiseHive and it's not the document we ask for, that's going to cause the application to become non-responsive. Same thing with things like diversity and inclusiveness. Even though they're small, they're required by executive orders from the city, and we don't have a say in that. So please make sure to get those key items in there so that we can review your application materials. Second, again, awareness of those addendums. Yes, we'll be publishing an addendum with the questions that we receive, not only from the meeting, but in the OED proposals box as well. However, it's always possible that we need to change something in the RFQ. That will be posted as an addendum only. And again, can't stress enough, sign in to that sign-in sheet in the back of the room, and that way you'll get notice of those addendums when they're published. Finally, please get in your written questions to this OED proposals box. If they come to my email, I can't answer them. If they come to Julie's email, she can't answer them. If they come to John's email, he can't answer them. And we can't answer them by phone. So please write them down, send them to OED proposals, and by that 4 p.m. deadline, that just make sure that we're treating everyone the same way, we're getting everyone the answers that they need on time and in sufficient detail. And finally, that hard deadline, 4 p.m. Mountain Daylight on October 17th for your proposals in the WiseHive system. And that's a final note. If we get anything that's outside of WiseHive, we cannot accept it, with exception of that diversity and inclusiveness. So everything must be uploaded in WiseHive for us to consider it as part of your application package. Anything else we are not allowed to consider. So again, please send all of your questions, whether they're substantive for the RFQ itself or whether they're technical questions regarding the WiseHive system, please send them to that OED proposals box. I think that's it for us. So we will go ahead and start accepting your questions. And we do have some mics as well that our lovely housing staff will pass around, but we want to make sure to get your questions on tape for those who are watching from out of state.
Will all the questions and answers be sent out to all those applicants or people, potential applicants who signed up?
Yes, so all of the questions have to be answered in the addendum format. That way, everyone who is either on an email list or not has access to those answers. But if you're on the email distribution list, then you will get notice that an addendum is published on the website and you can have access to those. I know we have more questions. No? Yes.
So you mentioned TIF, and you'd mentioned the opportunity for TIF financing, which could be if someone wanted to go through with that. How would that work with the timing with regard to going to city council? Because I know it's a long process.
Sure. Julie?
I'm going to ask Victor Caesar to answer that. Haley, could you bring up the mic?
Yeah, that's sort of why we want to sit down and meet with you, just so you understand that when you develop your construction timeline, that it is going to take a few months to get through city council. Luckily, it's already an existing urban renewal area, so we don't have to do a blight study, but we still have to amend the current redevelopment plan and sort of create the new tax increment area just for this spot. So that's sort of why we want to meet, and just to confirm that you actually have a gap in the first place. So.
chance you would give preference to a project? Give preference to a project that had more than the 25% AMI, or more than 25% restricted for sale units? Just curious if there was a benefit for trying to get more.
Yes, there definitely is a possibility we would give preference to a project that provided a greater proportion of affordable units. Of course, we'll look at that in relationship to how much OED investment is requested.
How do you want to have the income restricted units deeded? You can put a deed restriction on them for life, or is it a time delay, or how does it work?
We're contemplating that there will be a deed restriction, although if there's another way of securing the affordability that a respondent wants to propose, we could consider that. In terms of the length of the restriction, that will be one of the factors that we consider when we're looking at the public benefit that we get for the amount of subsidy requested.
So someone asked during the presentation about the 5 aspects of the proposal, if they would be weighted, and you said you're working on that. Will that be published before October 17th? And if so, how much before?
Good question. I understand why it would be fair to respondents to make that available, and we would need to discuss it, but we could consider including that in either the planned addendum or an additional addendum.
Sort of a different question maybe, but in this whole endeavor, this whole process, is there anything in place or will be in place that will give some kind of preference or priority to local residents to participate in this, or local businesses and currently existing businesses and that type of thing?
That's a great question, and it's something that we've discussed. In general, that would fall under the category of public benefits that a respondent could propose. I will also say that kind of within a different area of the OED housing group, we are doing research into local preference policies and trying to understand how preference for neighborhood residents can fit in with fair housing. We did also receive some written questions, so I'll just read those and we can try our best to answer them. The first one is, how does the gap plan on being addressed? So as I said, kind of going through the requirements, we are not offering a specific amount of subsidy in the RFQ. We are prepared to make attractive financing available. So we expect that OED will be part of filling the gap. It may be that TIF could be another source of financing that can help make a project feasible, but we're really looking to the creativity of respondents to propose how the project comes together.
Pardon me, Julie. For those that don't know, could you refer them to the OED term sheet so they can get some sense of the type of low-cost venture capital?
Yeah, absolutely. So the OED housing team has a set of term sheets that we use to guide our investment in affordable housing across all different types of affordable housing. So we have investment products for different kinds of rental projects. We have an investment product specifically for sale projects. and would encourage respondents to look at that as a starting point for proposing OED investment. There is a link to the term sheets in the RFQ proposal guidelines. We're open to proposals that go outside of the term sheets, knowing that this is a pilot and this is not our the typical project that we see, but that's a good place that we would suggest starting to get a sense of what kinds of investments we typically make. Sure, next one's for Victor.
I have a couple of questions. Do we have any indications as to what RTD would be willing to sell the land for, since that would be a big component to the financing?
The RTD Board of Directors resolution requires a fair market value for the sale of the property.
Okay. My second question is, since there's already some drawings that have been created for this land, are those set in stone, or is there some flexibility with that if we can figure out cheaper ways to build?
Yeah, by all means. The renderings were a test, a pilot in their own way to know that the project could perform, but we expect a developer to come up with his or her own designs as well as financial model.
Thank you.
Follow up on that. On the fair market value, has RTD done an appraisal, and is that appraisal publicly available? Or are we to propose to you what we believe to be a fair market value?
No, we have done an appraisal, and it's noted in the RFQ the value of the property. It came back at $1.8 million. Point 0.43 acres. Hot spot.
Regarding the first floor space, does that have to be defined at RFQ as to, is it going to be a grocery, is it going to?
Any developer is welcome to propose whatever he or she would like to propose, and it need not be ground floor commercial. That's just what the residents, the community prefers. But if a developer would rather propose residential on the ground floor, then by all means. But no, it does not need to be defined in the RFQ proposal.
A follow-up question to the 1.8 million fair market value. Is that based on the fact that there would be some affordable housing in this development, or is that based on this being a market rate development?
It's primarily based on comparable development in 5 Points. Seeing no other questions, I will ask one as well. Would the city consider a LIHTC application with the project converting to tenant ownership at the end of 15 years?
You skipped one. We, at this point, would not consider that. We're looking for a project that can provide affordable units to residents today. The way that the market has performed, nobody has a crystal ball. There will likely be a need for affordable homeownership in 15 years, but the problem exists today. I've got one that I think would be for Victor. Well, Jeff, do you want to ask this one about the status of TIF funds? So you phrase it right.
I guess, will they be available?
Will TIF funds be available?
There's a chance that it could be available. It sort of depends on what your gap in your project is. It's an existing urban renewal area, and luckily for this area, we start individual TIF clocks, so you'd have access to a full 25 years of property and sales tax increment. But we'd have to do a TIF capacity analysis, just so depending on what your vision is and what the project is will determine sort of how much TIF the site generates. I can't confirm that since RTD owns it, the current base is 0, which sort of works in your favor, since we'll be starting at 0, so you'd get all the increment, but that's more of a RTD question.
So you'd only be able to use the TIF that you generate? Is there any TIF available from surrounding sites?
Nope, this is a spot-specific TIF area.
Another written question we got is, are there any specific users slated for occupancy of the commercial space? If not, is the developer holding the commercial condo under a separate financing structure? So again, no, we don't have a specific user in mind for the commercial space. There are some ideas from the community. We're not necessarily looking for a respondent to define exactly how the commercial space would be used. And we're being pretty non-prescriptive in terms of financing. So if a respondent wanted to propose financing the commercial space separately, that's something we'd be open to considering. Wait for the mic so you get on tape.
Is the commercial retail area weighted in the RFP qualifications?
It is to the extent that we need a project that's going to meet the design guidelines, and the design guidelines ask for an activated first floor. So we want to make sure that respondents are reading and reviewing those and addressing the guidelines.
Thank you.
I have one last written question here. Are there any fees that are anticipated being waived, impact, TAP, taxes, permits, et cetera? No, not at this time. Those are all controlled by separate agencies within the city, and in general, the fees actually pay for something that we need to cover out. The city needs to cover in its budget somehow. So we typically think of that can be those costs can be part of what creates a gap that might lead to an ask for OED investment, but we're not currently contemplating any specific fee waivers for this project.
Any additional questions?
Last call.
Nope. Okay.
I'll just say thank you so much for your time and interest, and hopefully after today you are interested in responding, and we're really excited to get responses.
Thank you all.